I caught my husband lying about where he was going, and now he's telling me he's been spending time with his ex every weekend and wants to rekindle their relationship while staying married. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been catching small inconsistencies in Jake's 36M stories for a few weeks, little details that didn't quite add up. One weekend, he'd say he was going to catch up with an old buddy, and the next, he'd say he'd been out running errands. He'd become vague about where he'd been, saying he just needed some time to relax or got caught up helping a friend. I wanted to trust him, but the way he was acting didn't feel right. So I asked him straight out, hoping he'd laugh it off, tell me I was overthinking things, and reassure me. Instead, he hesitated, took a long breath, and dropped the truth on me. He'd been spending time with his ex-wife, Laura, 35F, every single weekend. I felt my heart clench as he said it, as though a cold wave was sweeping over me. Why? Was all I could manage, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes darted away. I didn't know how to tell you, he said quietly. It wasn't planned, really. We ran into each other a couple of months ago. She was going through a rough time, so I offered to lend an ear. Then one thing led to another, and I started seeing her on weekends. I tried to process his words, feeling an ache deepen in my chest. Jake, why didn't you tell me any of this? You were lying to me for months. He let out a sigh, looking genuinely uncomfortable. I know I should have told you, but I was afraid of how you'd react. I didn't want to make you feel insecure. Insecure? I repeated, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. So you thought sneaking around behind my back with your ex-wife was a better option. He had the decency to look ashamed, rubbing the back of his neck. It wasn't like that, really. I didn't know how to handle it. She and I have history, Anna, 34F. There are things we went through that I thought I'd moved on from, but being around her again brought up a lot of old feelings. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself as his words sank in. This wasn't just about him reconnecting with an old friend or catching up on life events. It was more than that. He was telling me he had real feelings for her, feelings he'd apparently been hiding from me, his wife. After a long, tense silence, I found the courage to ask, so what do you want, Jake? Are you saying you still have feelings for her? He took another long pause, and when he finally looked at me, his face was filled with a vulnerability I hadn't seen in a long time. Yes, I do. But it's not that simple, Anna. I love you too, and I don't want to lose what we have. I want to explore what's still there with Laura, without losing you in the process. My mind struggled to make sense of what he was saying, the words barely registering. Are you actually asking me to be okay with this? With you exploring things with your ex while staying married to me? He nodded slowly, as if he'd been dreading my reaction but had convinced himself this was a reasonable solution. I know it sounds crazy, but think about it. I'm not saying I want to leave you. I want both relationships. I think I need to figure out what these feelings mean, and if you could just give me the space to do that. I stared at him in stunned disbelief. So, let me get this straight. You want to spend time with your ex, figure out if you still love her, while staying married to me? Like some sort of open relationship. He winced at the term. I wouldn't call it that exactly. But yes, something like that. It wouldn't change anything between us, Anna. I'm not looking to hurt you. I want the chance to see where things go with Laura, and I believe I can do that while still being committed to you. I felt my chest tighten, and I struggled to keep my voice steady. Jake, do you even hear yourself right now? You're asking me to be okay with you two-timing me, basically. How do you think that makes me feel? He looked away, guilt flashing across his face. I know it's asking a lot, but I'm being honest with you now. I didn't have to tell you any of this. I could have kept lying, but I want you to be part of this decision. Took a shaky breath, trying to keep my composure. Jake, this is insane. I married you because I thought we were committed to each other. I didn't sign up for whatever this is. You don't get to bring me into your uncertainty and make me share you with someone else. That's not how marriage works. He shook his head, looking conflicted. I know, and I'm not trying to hurt you. I just think this is something I need to go through. I wish I could explain it better. The betrayal and hurt were overwhelming, but I forced myself to speak. Jake, you've been lying to me for months. You were already keeping me out of this, And now you're justifying it by saying you're being honest." He sighed, his face filled with regret. "I know I've messed up, and if it helps, I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I needed you to know the truth. This isn't just about her or me, it's about us too. I want you to be part of my life, no matter what." "No matter what?" I echoed, shaking my head. "Jake, you're asking me to accept a version of you that I don't recognize, that I don't want. I can't be part of a marriage where I'm sharing you with someone else." He looked down, his voice barely a whisper. "So, what does that mean for us?" I felt the weight of his question settle over me, a cold clarity filling my mind. "It means you have to make a choice, Jake. I won't be in a marriage where I'm not your priority, where I'm left wondering if I'm enough. If you want to go back to Laura, then go. But you don't get to keep me in limbo." He looked stricken, as if he hadn't considered the reality of having to choose between us. "Anna, I don't want to lose you. Please don't make me do this now." But I shook my head, standing up as a wave of exhaustion washed over me. "You can't have both, Jake. That's not how this works. I deserve someone who chooses me wholeheartedly, not someone who's still in love with his ex. You have to make a choice, because I can't live with someone who isn't all in." I turned and walked out of the room, not waiting for him to respond. The pain, the disbelief, the anger, all of it was too much to process. My mind was racing, my heart itching as I tried to make sense of what he'd just said. Jake, the man I trusted with my whole heart, was telling me he couldn't choose, that he wanted both of us, like we were options on some menu he could switch between at will. That night, I lay awake, my thoughts spinning with memories of our life together, of the times he promised me love and loyalty, of the future we planned. And now, it felt like it had all crumbled, replaced by a betrayal that cut deeper than any words could express. In the morning, he found me in the kitchen, his face drawn with regret. "Anna," he said quietly, "I need time to figure things out. But if you need space, I'll give it to you." I nodded, my voice barely steady. "Take all the time you need, Jake. But know this, if you choose her, I'm gone. I won't wait around for you to make up your mind." As he left the house, I felt a flicker of strength amid the heartbreak. I couldn't control his choices, but I could control my own, and I made up my mind. I wouldn't settle for anything less than a partner who was all in. This was a line I couldn't ignore, a boundary I wasn't willing to compromise. In the days that followed, the house felt like a hollow shell of what it had once been. Jake was staying somewhere else, at a friend's place, I assumed, though he didn't offer specifics, and I didn't ask. I could barely bring myself to look at his texts, simple messages checking in to see if I was okay, or asking if I'd had any thoughts about our last conversation. Each message felt like a tiny, stinging reminder of the truth he'd left hanging between us. I couldn't shake the image of him sitting with Laura, his ex, sharing something with her that he should have shared with me. I threw myself into work, trying to avoid thinking about the empty space in our bed, the awkward silence that filled our home. Friends reached out, and while I didn't give them details, I hinted that Jake and I were going through a rough time. A few of them offered support, but others, especially those who had known him a long time, seemed hesitant, unsure of what to say. I felt strangely isolated, like I was the only one in the room who knew how broken things had become. After a week of silence from Jake, he finally texted that he wanted to talk. He suggested meeting at a cafe nearby, a place we used to frequent in the early days of our relationship, back when everything had felt so simple and easy. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I agreed, hoping he'd had time to see reason. I arrived early, watching the door anxiously, until he walked in, looking worn and tired. He managed a faint smile, taking a seat across from me. For a moment, there was only silence, the two of us staring at each other across the small table, both weighed down by the conversation we were about to have. "Thanks for meeting me, Anna," he said, his voice soft. I nodded, keeping my arms crossed, feeling the barrier between us as though it were solid. "You said you wanted to talk, Jake. So talk." He took a deep breath, running a hand over his face. "I know I put you in an impossible situation, and I hate that I did. But I can't ignore these feelings, Anna. Seeing Laura again brought up things I thought were buried. And I guess I convinced myself that I could have both of you in my life without causing any harm." I felt a surge of frustration. "Did you even think about what that would do to me? To our marriage?" He nodded, looking pained. "I did, but not enough. I thought I could handle it, that I could keep the lines clear. I wanted to explore this without losing you because I really do love you, Anna. I didn't want to hurt you. A bitter laugh escaped me. So you love me, but you want to keep seeing her too. How does that even make sense, Jake? Do you understand what you're asking me to accept? He swallowed, his gaze dropping. I know it's selfish, but I feel torn. There's a part of me that feels like I owe it to myself to see where this goes with Laura. I'm trying to understand if it's something real or just nostalgia. So you're willing to risk everything we've built just to find out if there's still something there with her? I asked, my voice breaking. After everything we've been through, you'd throw it all away for what? A chance to relive your past. He reached across the table, but I pulled my hand back, the hurt too raw. I don't want to lose you, Anna. I want you to stay with me through this, to understand that this is about figuring things out. I want to see if I can reconcile what I'm feeling without losing you. Jake, I said slowly, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. That's not love. Love doesn't keep one foot in and one foot out. Love doesn't ask me to wait while you test the waters with someone else. It's all or nothing, and if you can't see that, then maybe you've already made your choice. He looked at me, desperation flickering in his eyes. Anna, please. I'm asking you to trust me, to let me work through this without forcing a decision. I want us to make it through this, but I also need to be honest about what I'm feeling. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was asking me to stay, to keep things as they were while he explored a connection with his ex. The selfishness of it, the disregard for what that would do to me, was staggering. I'd never felt so undervalued, so blatantly disrespected. I took a long, steadying breath, gathering every ounce of strength I had. Jake, I can't be your safety net while you figure out if you want to be with me or her. I deserve better than that. I deserve someone who chooses me without hesitation, who doesn't need to keep looking back at someone else. Please don't do this, Hannah, he pleaded, reaching for my hand again. I'm asking you to just give me time. We can still have everything we talked about, still build our future together. I pulled my hand back, standing up. Jake, the person you're describing, the one who'd stay and wait while you figure out if I'm enough. That's not me. I can't be that for you. I won't. He stared at me, his face crumbling as he realized the finality in my voice. So, what are you saying? I'm saying that I can't be in a marriage where I'm not your first choice, where you're holding onto a piece of someone else. I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. If you need time to figure things out with Laura, then take it, but I won't be waiting when you're done. The weight of my own words hit me, a painful certainty settling over me. I couldn't keep holding on to a man who wanted to have it both ways. He'd chosen to keep one foot in the past, and I wasn't willing to wait around, hoping he'd change his mind. He nodded, his face clouded with a mixture of guilt and regret. I never meant for it to come to this. I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to lose you. I let out a slow breath, the ache in my chest growing with every word. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to spend every weekend with her. With one last look, I turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving him sitting alone, the weight of his choices sinking in. I didn't stop to look back. I knew if I did, I'd start questioning myself, second-guessing the decision that had taken every ounce of my strength to make. That night, as I sat alone in our empty house, I felt the pain of loss settle over me like a heavy blanket. It wasn't just the loss of Jake. It was the loss of the life we planned, the future I'd dreamed of with him. But for the first time, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd chosen myself, my own worth, over someone who couldn't make up his mind. In the days that followed, friends and family reached out, asking what had happened. I shared only the bare details, too raw to delve into the specifics. Many were shocked, some tried to convince me to give him another chance. But those closest to me, those who knew my heart and how deeply I'd loved Jake, understood. They reminded me that I deserved better, that I was strong enough to rebuild my life on my own terms. And as the weeks passed, the hurt began to dull, replaced by a fierce determination to move forward, to create a life that was truly mine. Jake's absence became a reminder of my own resilience, a testament to my strength in refusing to settle for anything less than the love I deserved. Though I knew healing wouldn't happen overnight, I felt a quiet confidence growing within me, a certainty that I'd made the right choice. I'd chosen my own worth, my own happiness over the compromises he tried to offer. And as I looked toward the future, I knew that whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it, whole, strong, and truly free. The weeks that followed felt surreal. I was living in a version of my life I hadn't expected, one where I was both free and heartbreakingly alone. Without Jake, our house was silent. Friends and family filtered in and out, offering support and encouragement, though many didn't understand the depth of betrayal I felt. To some, it seemed like Jake's request had been just an idea, a temporary phase that I might have entertained to save our marriage. But to me, it had been an unforgivable line, a direct strike against the vows we had made. How could I share my husband's heart with someone else? As I rebuilt my routine, Jake occasionally sent brief messages. "I miss you," or "I hope you're doing okay." Each time, I would read them, stare at my phone, and ultimately delete them, reminding myself that I had walked away for a reason. I wanted to stay strong, to trust in my decision, but part of me wondered if I had acted too quickly. Had I really exhausted every option? Then, one Saturday, a mutual friend, Karen, reached out and asked if I wanted to meet up for coffee. Karen had known Jake since childhood, but over the years, she had become close to both of us. Part of me braced for a conversation that might turn into a defense of Jake's behavior, but I also needed someone who understood the intricacies of what I was going through. When I arrived, Karen greeted me with a sympathetic hug, her expression a mix of concern and support. "I've missed you, Anna. How are you holding up?" I gave a tight-lipped smile, sitting across from her. "It's been a lot, but I'm trying. Every day, I get a little stronger." She nodded, studying me for a moment. "I know you don't want to hear about Jake, but I just want to tell you one thing." She hesitated, then continued. "I think you need to know that he's been struggling. A lot." The ache in my chest flared, though I tried to keep my expression neutral. "Is he with her?" The words came out before I could stop them. Karen looked uncomfortable, but she nodded slowly. "I think so. They've been spending time together, but I don't think it's what he expected. I saw him the other day, and he looked lost, as if he doesn't really know what he's doing." A strange combination of sadness and satisfaction swept over me. I hated to think of him suffering, even after all he'd done, but I also knew that he had brought this on himself. "I wanted him to be happy," I said quietly. "If being with her was what he wanted, I would have let him go completely. But he wanted both of us, as if I was supposed to be fine with him dividing his heart in two. I just couldn't live like that." Karen nodded, her gaze softening. "You don't owe anyone an explanation, Anna. You deserve someone who is all in, someone who doesn't have to split his love between you and his past. It wasn't fair of him to ask that of you." I took a deep breath, letting her words settle over me. "Thank you. I just needed someone to understand. It feels like people are quick to say I should have compromised or waited for him to figure things out, but I couldn't live with half of him." Karen reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You don't deserve a partial love, Anna. You deserve the real thing. You deserve to be with someone who's certain about you." That conversation with Karen marked a turning point. Her words lingered in my mind for days, a reminder that my decision had come from a place of self-respect, not spite or anger. I had chosen myself, my own worth, over the prospect of a future where I'd be looking over my shoulder, wondering if Jake's heart was still tethered to his past. The next few weeks brought a quiet kind of strength. I started reconnecting with old hobbies, spending time with friends, and pouring myself into projects I'd put off. I was building something new, an independent life that I hadn't fully allowed myself to imagine before. It felt strange at first, navigating a world without Jake by my side, but each small step forward felt like a victory. Then, one evening, as I was unwinding with a book, my phone buzzed with a familiar number. "Jake." I let it ring for a few moments, hesitating, but finally answered. "Anna," he began, his voice heavy. "I know it's late, but I needed to talk to you. I need you to understand what's been going on in my mind." I stayed silent, my heart racing as I waited for him to continue. "I messed up," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. "I thought seeing Laura would give me clarity. I thought spending time with her would help me figure out what I wanted, but it only made things worse. I keep thinking about you, about us, and how much I took for granted." There was a long pause, and I could hear him take a shaky breath. I thought I could live in two worlds, keep the past alive while building a future with you. But I see now how impossible that was. I see how unfair it was to ask that of you. I closed my eyes, struggling to keep my emotions in check. Jake, I told you from the beginning that I wouldn't be part of a half-hearted marriage. You chose to gamble with our relationship, to let her back in, knowing what it could cost us. I know, he said quietly, his voice breaking. And I lost. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. I've realized that what I felt for Laura, it's nothing compared to what I had with you. I thought those feelings were unfinished business, but all they did was ruin the life we built. The sadness in his voice cut me deeply, stirring the love and loyalty I'd held for him for years. But I knew that going back would mean betraying myself, accepting a version of him that had already shown his willingness to compromise our marriage. I'm sorry, Jake, I said softly. I'm sorry you had to go through this to realize what you wanted. But I can't pretend this didn't happen. You made your choice, and I made mine. His voice cracked. Anna, please. I'll do anything to fix this. I know I can't erase what I've done, but I can make it up to you. I just want the chance to prove that I can be the husband you deserve. I closed my eyes, feeling the finality of my own words settle in. I know you're sorry, Jake, but sometimes sorry isn't enough. Sometimes the choices we make change things forever. I'm moving forward, and I need you to do the same. There was a long silence on the other end, and I could feel his pain through the phone. I understand, he said finally, his voice barely audible. I'll respect your decision, Anna. I'll always regret what I did to us. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and relief wash over me. It was over. The door was closed, not with anger or bitterness, but with the understanding that we couldn't go back to what we once had. That night, I felt a sense of closure, a quiet certainty that I had made the right decision. Jake's apology had been genuine, but it didn't change the fact that he had fractured our trust in a way that couldn't be mended. I had chosen myself, my own happiness, and the life I wanted to build on my own terms. The days that followed felt lighter, as though a weight I'd been carrying had finally been lifted. I began making plans for a future that was entirely my own, one filled with new possibilities and the freedom to define my happiness without compromise. I knew that the journey ahead wouldn't always be easy, but I also knew that I'd finally reclaimed my own heart. I was no longer waiting for someone else to choose me. I had chosen myself, and that, more than anything, felt like the beginning of a life worth living. With each day, I felt myself growing stronger, shedding the layers of pain and betrayal Jake had left behind. Friends and family reached out with encouragement, their support reminding me that I wasn't alone. I had chosen a path that felt right for me, even if it was the hardest one to walk. As the weeks passed, the memories of Jake began to lose their sharp edges. He was becoming more of a lesson than a loss. I stopped checking my phone for messages from him, stopped wondering how he was doing or if he'd reached out to Laura again. In a way, it felt like I was finally reclaiming parts of myself that had long been tied to his presence. One weekend, I decided to get away and spend some time with my family. My sister Lily, 28F, had invited me to her place by the lake, hoping to give me a change of scenery and a break from the house that still held echoes of my marriage. It was the perfect escape, quiet, peaceful, and just far enough away from everything to help me reset. As we sat by the water one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Lily looked over at me with a soft smile. "You seem different, Hannah, stronger." I nodded, watching the gentle ripples on the lake. "I feel different. For the first time in a long time, I feel free. I'm not waiting around for someone else's choices to dictate my life. It's like I'm finally moving forward." She squeezed my hand, her expression proud. "You deserve this peace, Hannah. I know it's been hard, but I think you're finally where you're meant to be." Her words stayed with me long after we left the lake. I knew that part of me would always carry the pain of what Jake had done, the hurt of being asked to share his heart with someone else. But I also knew that pain no longer defined me. I was building a new life, one rooted in self-respect, self-love, and the determination to never settle for anything less than I deserved. When I returned home, I found myself diving into projects I'd always put off, investing time in things that brought me joy. I started painting again, filling canvases with vibrant colors that reflected the hope and renewal I felt. My friends encouraged me to join a local art group, and for the first time, I felt a sense of belonging outside of the life I'd shared with Jake. The art group became a weekly refuge, a space where I could express myself freely without judgment or expectation. I met people from all walks of life, each carrying their own stories, and through their companionship, I found a new layer of healing. There was a warmth and kindness among us, a mutual respect that reminded me of what true connection felt like. One evening, after an art group session, I met Ben, 38M, a fellow artist who specialized in landscapes. He had an easygoing smile and a quiet strength that drew people in, and over time, we developed a friendship. He'd listen as I shared bits and pieces of my journey, offering a steady presence without prying or judgment. One evening, after we'd spent hours painting together, he turned to me, his gaze thoughtful. "You've been through a lot, Anna, but you're one of the strongest people I know. Most people would have lost themselves in anger or bitterness, but you're here, creating, moving forward. It's inspiring." His words filled me with a quiet warmth. "Thank you, Ben. I've spent a lot of time feeling broken, but I think I'm starting to feel whole again. It's strange, but I feel stronger than I ever have." He smiled, his gaze soft. "Maybe that's because you're finally living for yourself." Our friendship grew over the following months, a gentle connection built on mutual respect and understanding. There was no pressure, no expectations. Just two people who enjoyed each other's company, who understood what it meant to start over. Eventually, as spring turned to summer, I found myself opening up to the idea of dating again. It wasn't about filling a void or moving on from Jake. It was about allowing myself the possibility of love that felt true and grounded. Ben and I grew closer, our time together filled with laughter and a quiet joy I hadn't felt in years. His kindness, his respect for my boundaries, and his patience gave me the space to be myself, to rediscover parts of me that had been buried. One evening, as we walked along the beach after an art group outing, he turned to me, his expression serious yet hopeful. "Anna, I know you're still healing, and I respect that. But I also want you to know that I'm here for you. For as long as you need, in whatever way you need." I looked at him, my heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Ben. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm open to exploring it with you. You make me feel seen, understood, in a way I haven't felt in a long time." He reached for my hand, holding it gently as we continued to walk, the waves lapping at our feet. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to create a future based on trust and genuine care. I knew I wasn't entirely over the pain of the past, but with Ben by my side, I felt renewed hope, a sense that I could build something beautiful from the pieces I'd gathered. Over the weeks, our connection deepened, and I found myself falling in love in a way that was entirely different from my past with Jake. This love was steady, secure, grounded in friendship and mutual respect. Ben never asked me to compromise my boundaries or sacrifice my happiness for his own. And because of that, I felt safe, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. My friends noticed the change in me, the newfound confidence that had replaced the heartache I'd carried for so long. And though some were surprised by how quickly I'd moved on from Jake, I knew in my heart that my healing had come from within, not from anyone else. I had chosen to let go, to release the hurt, and to build a life filled with love that was wholly my own. In time, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Jake had moved away, apparently hoping to start fresh himself. I wished him well from a distance, feeling nothing but a quiet closure. He had been part of my story, a chapter filled with both joy and pain, but he no longer held any power over my life. I was free, truly free, and ready to embrace a future that was entirely my own. And as the seasons changed once again, I realized that I had found something even more precious than love, a deep, unwavering belief in my own strength, my own worth. I'd walked through heartbreak, through betrayal, and come out on the other side not only whole but stronger, wiser, and more open to the beauty of life than ever before. Months passed, and the new life I had been slowly building felt richer, fuller than I ever could have imagined. I had my art, my friendships, and a sense of freedom I hadn't known before. With Ben, everything was easy. There was no tug of war, no doubt or insecurity. We didn't need grand gestures to feel close or promises to feel secure. We just were. Our relationship grew out of a genuine friendship, a trust that had built slowly, naturally, without pressure or expectations. And with him, I felt at peace. One Saturday morning, we found ourselves at the farmer's market. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and we were wandering through the stalls, laughing over odd produce shapes and sampling fresh baked bread. As we strolled, I realized that this life I'd found felt like everything I had once wanted, only better because I'd built it from the ground up. Ben noticed my expression and gave my hand a light squeeze. "What's going through your mind?" he asked, smiling as he glanced down at me. I shrugged, smiling back. "I'm just happy," I replied, feeling a genuine joy that ran deep. I never thought I'd feel this way again, like everything makes sense. He chuckled, his eyes warm. "Well, I'm glad I could be part of that." I squeezed his hand in return, feeling a surge of gratitude for all the kindness and patience he'd shown me. This man, who had come into my life when I was still patching up my heart, had given me the time and space to heal at my own pace. And now, without even realizing it, we had grown into something beautiful together, something I could trust. After that morning, I threw myself even more fully into the things that made me feel alive. I joined local art shows, showcasing my work with a pride I hadn't felt in years, and watched as my small community of friends and supporters grew. People who appreciated me for who I was, people who brought out the best in me now filled my life. One evening, I received a message from Jake. It was short, almost apologetic, and he wrote that he'd finally come to terms with everything that had happened. He mentioned he was moving away, hoping to start fresh somewhere new, and that he wished me nothing but happiness. I read it twice, feeling a mix of emotions, relief, closure, and a strange kind of peace. I wrote back, simply wishing him well, and when I hit send, I felt a final weight lift off my chest. This chapter was now truly closed. Ben noticed me smiling down at my phone and raised an eyebrow. "Good news?" I nodded, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Just some closure I didn't realize I still needed. He nodded, understanding without needing more explanation, and pulled me close. I leaned into him, grateful for this steady presence in my life, someone who truly saw me, who didn't need me to be anything but myself. Our relationship grew deeper, and as the months turned into a year, I felt ready to embrace the future fully without hesitation. We had become each other's safe place, a home built on trust, respect, and unwavering love. It was something I hadn't thought possible after what I'd been through, but it was real, and it was mine. One evening, as we watched the sun set over the lake, Ben took my hand and looked at me with that familiar, gentle smile. "Anna," he began, his voice soft but steady, "I've watched you grow, watched you build this life on your own, and I feel so incredibly lucky to be part of it. I want you to know that whatever the future holds, I'm here for you, all in, as long as you'll have me." I felt my heart swell, warmth filling every corner of me. "Ben, I feel the same way," I replied, smiling through happy tears. "I never thought I'd find someone like you, someone who understands, who truly values me for who I am. I'd be honored to walk into the future with you." That night, as we held each other under the stars, I knew that I'd found something unshakable. Ben had come into my life at a time when I didn't believe I was capable of opening my heart again, and he'd shown me what love could be when it was rooted in respect, honesty, and kindness. In the weeks that followed, I continued painting, filling our home with art that captured the joy and hope that had blossomed within me. Our friends and family became part of this new life we were building, celebrating every milestone with us. And with every moment, I felt the assurance that I was exactly where I was meant to be. Looking back, I could see that my journey hadn't been easy. I'd faced betrayal, heartbreak, and moments of doubt, but I had come through it stronger, more resilient, and more certain of my worth than ever before. The choices I had made, to walk away, to choose myself, to heal and rebuild, had led me to this life, one filled with the love that honored my heart and my dreams. As the sun rose on a new day, I felt a profound gratitude for every step of my journey. I had found my way back to myself, and I knew that, no matter what the future held, I was ready to face it with open arms. This was my life, full, beautiful, and built on the strength I had found within.